The enigmatic technicians who repaired and enhanced angstrom levy stand as one of the most technologically advanced civilizations encountered in the invincible universe. Their origins lie in an alternate dimension, one so irreversibly doomed that normal organic life is incapable of survival. Once their world had thrived, but an apocalyptic event, possibly caused by their own technological overreach, left it in ruins. The very air became toxic. Ecosystems collapsed, and even their most sophisticated environmental control measures failed to reverse the decay. Rather than abandoning their home entirely, they made the ultimate sacrifice. They transformed themselves. By integrating cybernetic enhancements into their bodies, they transcended the limitations of biological life. Over time, these modifications became more extreme, until they were more machine than organic. This adaptation allowed them to endure their desolate world, but at a cost. Their sense of identity and purpose shifted. They could survive, but their civilization was stagnating. Their efforts to rebuild always met with failure. Determined to find a true solution, they turned outward. Using their advanced technology, they launched incursions into countless other planets in their dimension, conquering entire civilizations in search of a habitable world or resources to restore their own. Yet, no matter how many worlds they subjugated, nothing was permanent. Either environmental factors rendered long-term settlement impossible, or their own presence triggered instability. Every attempt at rebuilding was ultimately doomed to fail. The cycle of conquest and collapse persisted, leaving them desperate for a permanent solution. They were in this state of despair until they first encountered angstrom levy. Angstrom had already attempted to absorb the collective knowledge of his alternate selves, hoping to gain unparalleled understanding of the multiverse. His goal had originally been noble: to use his newfound awareness to solve the crises afflicting different versions of Earth, perhaps even preventing the rise of tyrants like alternate versions of Invincible. However, due to the interference of Invincible himself, the process went awry. Instead of enlightenment, Angstrom was left with a fractured mind, one overwhelmed by the memories of countless brutal realities. The overwhelming trauma reshaped him, distorting his noble ambitions into an obsessive thirst for vengeance. Across nearly every dimension, Invincible had become a dictator, a monster, or a weapon of destruction. Angstrom came to believe that this version, the one he had personally fought, was the root cause, the one who needed to be destroyed above all others. Weakened, injured, and lost in the multiverse, Angstrom came upon the technicians' dying world. They recognized his multiversal abilities as something extraordinary. He was an individual who could travel between realities at will, something they had only thought about doing with extensive technological effort. Angstrom, ever the manipulator, seized the opportunity. He promised them a true solution to their plight, a dimension where they could exist free from their cybernetic prisons, a paradise where they would no longer need to modify their bodies to survive. More than that, he claimed that in this world, they would be viewed as gods, rulers of an untouched utopia. The technicians, desperate for salvation, listened. They had spent centuries searching for a stable home, and while they had encountered advanced beings before, none had offered them anything of true permanence. Angstrom's words carried weight, and his ability to traverse dimensions at will convinced them he could deliver on his promises. Thus, they agreed to his demands. They not only healed Angstrom's broken body, but augmented him beyond his original capabilities. His physique was strengthened, his durability increased, and his mind fortified against further fractures. They provided him with new resources, equipping him with technology beyond anything he had access to before. In return, Angstrom vowed to find them their paradise. Yet, unknown to the technicians, Angstrom had already abandoned any noble goals. His search for a suitable world for them was secondary. His true priority was vengeance. With his newfound strength and resources, he set out once again, not to save the multiverse, but to destroy the one Invincible he blamed for everything. Meanwhile, the technicians continued to wait. They watched and prepared, and if Angstrom failed them, their patience would run out, and for a species that has conquered countless worlds, hunting down a dimension hopper who they themselves have modified wasn't going to be a tough job. In one of his many plots to exact revenge on Invincible, Angstrom Levy sought to torment those closest to his enemy. He orchestrated a cruel plan that targeted Invincible's mother, Debbie Grayson, and his half-brother Oliver, while simultaneously subjecting Mark Grayson to a relentless journey through alternate dimensions. His intention was to break Invincible psychologically, forcing him to witness horrors across the multiverse while his family suffered in his absence. However, despite his intricate planning, Angstrom's scheme ultimately failed. Invincible returned, thwarted his efforts, and in the ensuing battle, left Angstrom gravely injured. Barely clinging to life, Angstrom once again sought refuge in the domain of the technicians. He reminded them of their previous arrangement, the promise that he would secure them a livable world free from their technological burdens in exchange for their aid. Although the technicians had grown weary of waiting, they saw no advantage in letting their investment die. They agreed to repair his body, but unbeknownst to Angstrom, they took further precautions this time. They integrated hidden modifications into his body, subtle, undetectable cybernetic enhancements that could be activated if he ever attempted to betray them or failed to uphold his promise. These modifications ensured they would always maintain control over him, should the need arise. Once restored, Angstrom was granted further technological resources. The technicians equipped him with advanced surveillance devices that allowed him to track Invincible across dimensions, ensuring he could always monitor his foe. As Angstrom resumed his travels, amassing an army of evil alternate versions of Invincible, the technicians observed from afar. They cared little for his obsession with revenge. Their sole concern was the fulfillment of their bargain. If his actions furthered their own objectives, they would not interfere. If he strayed too far from their interests, however, they would be prepared to act. After the catastrophic Invincible War, Angstrom suffered yet another devastating defeat at the hands of Mark Grayson. His reckless assault, which had seen him deploy an army of alternate Invincibles to destroy Earth, ended in ruin. Mark, in a fit of rage, nearly beat Angstrom to death, leaving him mutilated and missing an arm. With no other option, Angstrom returned to the technicians once more, demanding that they restore him. But this time, the technicians' patience had worn thin. They no longer saw Angstrom as the one in control of their arrangement. He was no longer the one dictating the terms. Instead, they informed him that his debts had come due. They had followed his ambitions long enough, watching as he pursued his vendetta while failing to deliver on his end of the bargain. So from that moment forward, Angstrom would no longer issue orders. Instead, he would follow theirs. Nevertheless, the technicians agreed to repair him, replacing his lost arm with a seamlessly integrated cybernetic appendage. The upgrade was more than just a replacement. It was a symbol of their dominance over him. His body was now a testament to their influence, a constant reminder that his survival was at their mercy. But their demands did not stop there. They no longer wished to wait, to watch from the sidelines as Angstrom chased his petty revenge. They required him to fulfill his promise and lead them to a new world, a refuge where they could finally abandon their ruined dimension. Yet, their ambitions did not end with simple relocation. According to them, escaping their dying world was only the beginning. Their plan was far greater in scope, one that Angstrom, despite his intelligence, had never fully grasped. He had underestimated them, as his arrogance had blinded him to the reality that, in the end, the technicians had always been the true masters of this arrangement. Now, as their reluctant servant, Angstrom faced a choice: uphold his end of the deal and help them achieve their long-awaited salvation, or risk discovering what other modifications they had implanted within him, modifications they had yet to activate. Years passed, and utilizing his unmatched ability to traverse the multiverse, he systematically gathered resources from various alternate Earths, each one offering something unique, and with them, he created a new world for the technicians. But the transformation did not end with infrastructure alone. Angstrom sought to fulfill the technicians' desire not only for survival, but for absolute dominion. Through careful selection and manipulation, he introduced a new population to the dimension, a civilization conditioned to worship the technicians as gods. These inhabitants, plucked from various alternate realities, were shaped into devoted followers, revering the technicians as omnipotent beings and attending to their every want and desire. The technicians, who had once been desperate wanderers clinging to a dying world, now ruled over an engineered utopia where they were seen as divine rulers. For the first time in centuries, they had no need for cybernetic enhancements to sustain their existence. With everything accomplished, the technicians no longer had any need for Angstrom. He had fulfilled his part of the bargain, restoring their world and securing their godhood. As such, they granted him his freedom, severing any lingering ties that had once bound him to their service. Free from their oversight, Angstrom was finally able to turn his full attention back to his ultimate goal, his relentless pursuit of revenge against Invisible. However, despite their apparent satisfaction, the technicians remained ever watchful. They had gained everything they desired, yet they knew all too well the unpredictable nature of the multiverse. If Angstrom ever proved to be a threat to their newfound dominion, or if his continued actions jeopardized their perfected world, they would not hesitate to act. For now, they allowed him to go free, but their influence would always loom in the shadows, ensuring that their reign remained eternal. After returning to his own dimension, Angstrom Levy arrived in a city devastated by massive flooding. As he surveyed the destruction, he stumbled upon shocking news. Mark Grayson, his most hated enemy, was dead. The revelation stunned him, but soon, a wave of relief washed over him. With Invincible gone, his long-standing vendetta was no longer necessary. For the first time in years, Angstrom felt at peace. No longer burdened by hatred, he allowed himself to live a carefree and happy life, unbothered by thoughts of revenge. However, this peace was short-lived. One fateful day, Angstrom returned home and casually picked up a newspaper, only to be met with a horrifying realization. The headline confirmed that Mark Grayson was very much alive. Under the cover of darkness, he infiltrated Mark's home. As he lurked in the shadows, he watched Samantha Eve walk through the door. Fueled by his rekindled hatred, Angstrom attempted to strangle her, intending to make Mark suffer. But before he could finish the job, Mark arrived. Without hesitation, Angstrom used his powers to strand Mark in another dimension, ensuring he was no longer a threat, at least for the moment. With Mark gone, Angstrom turned his attention back to Eve. As he studied her, something puzzled him. Why hadn't she used her powers to fight back? His extensive knowledge of dimensional variations allowed him to deduce the reason: Eve was pregnant. This revelation gave him pause. For the first time, he was forced to confront something beyond his thirst for revenge. Eve, seizing the moment, engaged him in conversation. She recounted what Mark had told her about Angstrom, that he had been the one to sabotage the device while trying to help Mark, cutting off the process before it could be completed. Angstrom, however, denied this accusation, claiming that it was a lie. Eve doesn't stop there. She accuses him of being responsible for Rexplode's death. She condemned his obsession with revenge, arguing that it had consumed him entirely. Then, she struck a nerve. Eve pointed out that Angstrom possessed a gift few others did: access to infinite dimensions. She questioned why he wasted such potential on petty revenge when he could use his abilities for something greater. The words resonated with him. For the first time, Angstrom found himself questioning his actions. Could it be true? Had he truly lost his way? Overwhelmed, Angstrom hesitated. A realization dawned upon him. His relentless pursuit of vengeance had blinded him to the very purpose he had once fought for. The memories of his past became hazy. Had his own actions led him down this path? He could no longer be certain. With a heavy heart, Angstrom made a decision. He opened a portal and released Mark, along with his alternate counterpart, freeing them from their captivity. Angstrom confessed that the process he had undergone might have erased parts of his memory, causing him to lose sight of his original goals. He admitted his mistakes and apologized for everything he had done. However, things took a dark turn. Instead of letting him go free, the alternate Mark pulled Angstrom into his dimension, trapping him in an unfamiliar and sinister world. Then months later, when Mark and Robot eventually managed to reach that dimension, they were met with a horrific sight. Angstrom Levy was still alive but was enduring unimaginable torment. He was being tortured relentlessly, his mind pried open in a cruel attempt to force him to use his knowledge to further the expansion of the Viltrumite Empire under the rule of this Mohawk Mark. Before Mark could intervene, Robot betrayed him. Without warning, he emitted a low-frequency pulse that incapacitated Mark. In the blink of an eye, Robot swiftly executed the Mohawk Mark and the surrounding scientists, eliminating all witnesses. Then, in one final, cold act of efficiency, he decapitated Angstrom Levy, ensuring that Mark would never have a way to return to his original reality. After this, when Mark returns to his reality, Robot takes over Earth with his drones and kills many heroes and supervillains. Then years later, technicians appear once again. Despite having been granted a utopia, for reasons unknown, the technicians launched an invasion on mainstream Dimension Earth. Utilizing a formidable fleet of advanced warships and highly sophisticated weaponry, they descended upon the planet with devastating force. Their technology was far superior to anything Earth had encountered before, and the invasion quickly turned into a catastrophe, with entire cities reduced to rubble. However, thanks to the combined efforts of Emperor Nolan, ruler of the new Viltrumite Empire, and Robot, who effectively controlled Earth's government, the technicians were ultimately defeated. And so this is how Story of the Technicians and Angstrom Levy comes to an end.